Hello everyone, welcome to the fifth video in our series. This video will go over the template document and how users can modify the template document to change the default symbology of their output mapping results. So we'll get started by opening the template document in our source directory. And so as a refresher, the template document, the symbology of the layers in the template document are applied to the output mapping results created when the tool runs. And so the symbology of these layers here is always applied to the output mapping results. So if we want to change the the default symbology, we can change it here, and then it will be applied to any of our new output mapping results. So for instance, the benchmark rivers here, if we don't want the color to be yellow, we can come here and change it to be whichever color we want, or if we want them to be a bit thinner or wider, we can change their width as well. And then we press OK, and those changes will then be saved in the template document once we save it. And then when the tool runs next time, it will reference this template document and make those new changes and apply those to the output mapping results. A few things to note, many of the layers in our template document are group layers. All except for the benchmark rivers, in fact, are group layers. And they make use of definition queries to group some of the output results into these individual sublayers. So for instance, a good example of this is the barriers features class. So we have our included barriers and our excluded barriers. And if we remember back to the video where we parameterized our tool, there was a special field we selected that indicated which barriers would be included and which ones would be excluded from our analysis. And that field that we specified is referenced in our definition query. So if we open up the properties of this, we can see the definition query. Now the definition queries set in the template document don't actually apply to the output mapping results. The definition queries are set when the tool is running and are applied by the code itself, not from the template document. And so if you change the definition query here, it will not have an impact on the output mapping result. You would need to, I'll talk a bit more about definition queries in a bit and how we can change those. But just to illustrate this point, when we select that field, the barrier inclusion field, the field name is appended here. And so in my case, I selected the field INC, and then it is set to equal 1. So if we remember, values of 1 indicated which barriers to include in the analysis, and values of 0 indicated which barriers to exclude from the analysis. So in this layer, only the included barriers are displayed. If we go to the excluded barriers, we can see that their value is set to 0, which are the barriers that are excluded. And so only the excluded barriers are displayed in that layer. And that's how we get this breakdown of our orange versus gray barriers, with the gray being the excluded ones and the orange being the included ones. And so we use a similar approach for all of our other layers. So for instance, in map CSI, we have a series of sublayers which correspond to river order, with our larger rivers at the top here and our smaller rivers down here, with variable line width throughout. As you can see, the lines get thicker as we go, increase with river size. But we apply a similar color scheme throughout, so that way it's just the width of the rivers that changes between these sublayers, and so that way the colors are still always interpretable the same. It's just we get a more of a visual display of which rivers are larger than others. And so again, these layers make use of the definition queries. And so we can see here this for our first layer, river order 1, it's set that there's a section of the definition query so that only rivers with river order 1 are displayed in this sublayer, and also values where their CSI is less than 100, so rivers that are not free-flowing. This section of the code is hard-coded into the tool and can be edited by editing the tool, which I'll show in a moment. We can also look at the free-flowing river status, which again makes use of similar group layers, except this one has additional groups within its original group. And the layers are broken down into sublayers of very long, medium, and short. And these are assigned using the definition query again, where very long rivers are considered rivers over 1,000 kilometers, referencing the backbone length field. We also have the CSI free-flowing status field here that's referenced, and so only in the impacted sublayer, only rivers that are have a value of 3, which is the non-free-flowing or the impacted category, are shown in this group layer. If we look at the good or the free layers, we'll see that the CSI FF2 is set to 2 for good rivers and set to 1 for free-flowing rivers. So now we'll get to the point of the code where we can go and look at how we might change these definition queries if we wanted. A little bit of a caveat here, this would require a bit of coding experience as we'll need to be able to navigate through the code and understand a bit of what's going on. We'll also need access to a script editing software. So for instance, I use Visual Studio Code. And I recommend setting in your geoprocessing options, there's an option to set your editor here. So you can set the path to the executable file that launches your script editing software. So that way, whenever you launch an editor in ArcMap, it opens the script in that program of your choice. So if we go to the tool in our directory, we right-click on it, we have this option to edit the tool. So if we click on that, it's going to open it in the script editing software specified in my geoprocessing options. And so from here, we can do Control F, and we're going to search for customizing the map template. And that brings us to this section of the code here, where we specify the definition queries for for the layers in the template document. So the first bit of these strings of code is the long name of the layer in our template document, followed by the path to the data source, which is determined programmatically in the code, as well as the output feature class, which again is referenced programmatically in the code. So you don't need to make many changes to these two sections of the code unless you wanted to add your own layers, which I'll cover shortly. It's mostly the definition queries, so if you wanted to change the length categories for the free-flowing river status categories that I was talking about, so in this case the very long rivers are greater than 1,000 kilometers, you could adjust this by adjusting that number, but make sure that you would adjust it for all of the definition queries as well. So yeah, this is where you can edit the definition queries and really get under the hood of the tool and customize how your mapping results might be displayed by default. You can also add additional layers if you would like. For instance, if you have river orders of 11, you could copy this bit of code here and just change the numbers from 10 to 11, and that way, and then also add a subsequent matching file in the template document, matching layer, so that way the code will make reference to that layer in the template document and apply the symbology of that layer to the output results. You can also add completely new layers if you'd like. It's a bit more complicated, but the general structure is here where you can create a layer in the template document, reference it using its long name here. You can then reference the path to the data source you would like to use to draw that layer and the name of the feature class you want to use for that layer, and then any definition query you want to set. And again, you can apply the symbology of in the template document, which would then be applied to the output mapping result. So that brings us to the end of this video. In this video, we covered some of the customization options that are available for the mapping template document, and how you can change some of the basic symbology to change how those will alter the output mapping results, but also how you can get under the hood of the tool here and really make it your own and really customize how you want the mapping results to be drawn.